Really ready, so.
The Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We are going to get started in just a minute. So get your coffee, find your seat, and then we get to welcome Elizabeth D'Amico Carper, our member, who is a hospice chaplain, to lead us in a workshop on end-of-life preparation and hospice care. So we'll just get started in a minute. Yeah, it's well, yeah. Oh, okay. Use the bit to make that. Yeah, it's no way. So many things. All right, everybody, I'll get us started because I can get real passionate about hospice care. So I'll promise I'll keep my eye on the clock so I don't go over. But thank you for being here for a brave conversation. I guess I need to use the mic for the live stream, which I'm happy to do. Okay, yeah. I got the nod from Jacob. So as Pastor Martha said, I'm Elizabeth D'Amico Carper. You may know me from my months on piano, but my day-to-day is as Director of Support Services for Brighton Hospice. So I left congregational ministry. I'm also a pastor in the St. Paul Area Synod. Left congregational ministry, just needed a break. Found myself at Brighton Hospice, which was kind of the hospice that my church used. I was a pastor at Memorial Lutheran in Afton. And when I saw that they had a position open, I thought, wow, maybe this is the right thing. We also used Brighton when my dad was sick and dying. And so I know them as a caregiver and as a pastor and as a chaplain. And then about a year and a half ago, joined the leadership team as director of spiritual care, supportive services. I also work with our music and massage therapists and our volunteer coordinators. So kind of hit it all. But I'm in no way here to sell you on Brighton Hospice. That is not the point of this conversation. It is to introduce you or help better educate you on hospice care and end-of-life preparation. So the information I want to share is in two buckets. This first one is about end-of-life preparations and conversations. And I love this quote. I use it a lot in my work from Ram Dass, simply saying, we're all just walking each other home. We talk about that a lot in our work. It takes courageous people to work in hospice and to join another family or a lonesome individual and help them to go home at the end of their earthly life. And so this is kind of the simple truthiest truth of the work that we do is that we are walking each other home. And before we dive in to some of the nitty gritty that I want to share with you, I thought we would ground ourselves in the promises of our faith that this life is not the end of what we know, and that's not the end of what we are promised by our living God. And so let's just put that in our bodies for a minute here. Would you sing this chant that maybe you've heard before with me? We'll sing it a few times through. If we live to the Lord. If we Amen. We'll hold that as our touchstone for the rest of our presentation here today, and we're going to come back to it one more time before we end. So in my work, both as a daughter and a pastor and a chaplain and now in hospice leadership, these are elements of preparing for the end of our earthly life that we talk about a lot. And I've got a list here, and I think if I want to say anything about this list, it's that all of it's good. But if you leave here and you go, wow, she gave us a big to-do list, I haven't done my job right. Not all of these are appropriate for every family system. So this is kind of introducing you maybe, or maybe you were like, I got it all done and it's in my safe box at home. Then you get the gold star for the day. But if not, just know that these are things to consider as you consider preparing the generation that will be left behind from you for the end of your life. Or perhaps this is a hard conversation you need to have with the elders of your family system. So I just want to break a few of these down: healthcare directive and healthcare agent. In my current role, this is probably the one that I walk into the most when families are unprepared. And this can be useful. Let's say our patient is Franny. Franny has 2 kids and they disagree about her care. And Franny has dementia and is no longer able to make her own choices. Had Franny 15 years earlier designated a healthcare agent, then it would be very clear who will make the decisions. This isn't a power struggle, right? This is about clarity and helping the family not have, in the midst of grief and loss, a whole bunch of conflict. So your healthcare agent is the voice in the room when you don't have a voice anymore. And so maybe if you have 2 children, one of them isn't the right choice because that might create an immediate power struggle. I know for my dad, it was an incredibly useful thing. I was his healthcare agent. And my brothers are both, well, one's a pastor, one's a worship director. We all work in churches. We've all been involved in end-of-life ministry our whole life. So you would think if there's a family that is good to go, it's this one. And we needed his preparation. So he prepared a healthcare directive long before he ever got sick. We were not expecting his illness at 68. And when I had to come to that moment of a really hard decision, and he wasn't mentally with us anymore, my older brother said, let's read his healthcare directive. And now they were on speakerphone in different states. And here I was in the hospital over in Maplewood. And my brother read my dad's healthcare directive over the phone. And then when he got done, there was no decision left for me to make. He had made it. His voice was still in the room. So your healthcare directive keeps your voice in the room. And again, I rarely see that as a power play. It is so that there is relief. Like that burden was off my shoulders in that moment. And that was the true gift of the healthcare directive. And I was still very honored to be the healthcare agent, the one to speak for him when he couldn't speak for himself. So that is all about your medical care, when to say enough is enough, when to say comfort over quantity, those kind of hard decisions when you're not there to make them anymore. Power of attorney, this is probably what some people kind of use power of attorney to like cover all the other ones. Power of attorney really deals with your estate. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not giving any legal advice, but just saying, you know, what these kind of break down to. And living will deals with your stuff. And none of this has to be overly formal. You can have just the healthcare directive and the living will. And that might be what you leave your family. That might be just the right combination of things to help them get through those next steps with some peace and with your voice in the room. So I would say these first three are things to do and tend to with yourself and your most trusted confidants. A great thing about community education is most community education programs are always offering like a living will class. So you can go and take that. It's like a half a day on a Saturday, not a lot of money, and you'll walk out with your living will done. So that's how I would recommend getting it done. You have to get it notarized, but that's certainly not that hard to do. So these first three are things that you can do. You can find the forms online, make sure they're for the state of Minnesota, if that's where you live. These are the three things that I think would make, not after you have died, but the time before you die, as supportive to those that will be helping you as possible. And then when I'm talking church folks, I kind of think, when I was a pastor, I would have put these bottom two at the top. Most important, you need to get these done. You've got a faith community that will get you through those last two. So now I flip them. These are still really important. But I think funeral planning can look a lot of different ways. I know when at my last congregation, every All Saints Sunday, it's All Saints Sunday today, I would lead a funeral planning workshop for my congregation. We just had a patient, one of our chaplains was telling me that she had like on a scrap of paper, 2 hymns written down. And the family was saying to our chaplain, do you know what these are? It was like, How Great Thou Art and Amazing Grace or something. And the chaplain's like, yeah, these are hymns and these will be so beautiful, you know, after service. She wants to give you this comfort and these amazing messages in these hymns. So funeral planning can look like a beautiful document that you've prepared, discussed with your pastor, then will be here at your church. Or it can be a scrap of paper with the words you want your family to be surrounded with when they are grieving the end of your life. And then I just have to say this because I have seen it serve families in every capacity that I have been in. A prepaid funeral package can be a great gift to your family. It is a very expensive life passage, or it can be. And imagine kind of being steeped in that grief. Sometimes we make not our most rational choices. And so, you know, the $10,000 coffin and the, you know, $3,000 funeral or flowers spread. If you make some of those choices and prepay, what a gift when your family goes to the funeral home, should they use a funeral home, and all those things are arranged. So these are kind of again, pick and choose what's right for your family. I'm not saying all of these need to be done, but I have kind of listed these in what I would say order of importance. I am probably projecting my own family stuff on that as well. Questions or comments so far? Yes, sir.
Is it still true that don't need a
Notary
objection witnesses?
for the power of attorney, living will. Thank you.
I'm an attorney and I practice this area. Yes, your healthcare directive can either have a notary or 2 witnesses. And that includes appointing an agent and the living will components that speak about it.
And is there still a pretty category of a healthcare power of attorney?
Not really.
Not really.
Yeah. I mean, I think it technically was, but you don't have to. These are, they're not necessarily.
Yeah.
There was, I have a friend who passed away recently, and he had made a decision to be an organ donor.
Wonderful.
But we were in the hospital room helping him transition from this life to the next.
Mm,
But the organ donation company, life, something, whatever, life, whatever, and they had to tell us that we have to keep him alive in the hospital room for like a few weeks to process the organs, test the organs, just literally see if he had good organs to donate.
sure.
But the mother, the sister, she's like, he's gonna be gone in a few minutes. We don't wanna prolong, and process, and so that was a really quick decision that was made that was not. I mean, I knew the person, and we all knew the person, that's not what he would have wanted. If we're gonna process organ donations, we thought it was gonna be like within 24 hours or whatever. So that's a whole nother
Yeah.
dimension of all of this. I don't wanna be kept alive just for organ processing.
Right. And did he make those wishes known in writing at all?
He just checked on his driver's license.
Sure.
Organ
Yeah.
donation, and that's it, that there was no other
Yeah.
death planning, life planning, nothing.
So something to think about if I've checked that box. So if you've checked that box, yeah, including that in your healthcare directive. I don't know, paging Dr.
Yeah.
Patrick.
He was 48, and, so, like, even though it's other religions or beliefs, you have to bury the body within 24 hours,
Mm,
or other
I know, that's
stipulations, and so there's a whole, like, we have to really, really think about all the unintended consequences and all the ramifications.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And even, I'm sorry, real quick, this is something I'm struggling with, is cremation. Can I be resurrected if I'm cremated? But that's a whole nother conversation offsite.
No, that's okay. I mean, that is not an uncommon question. What does our faith tell us? What can God do at the resurrection?
Anything, yeah,
Anything.
anything.
Yeah, I don't think God's stopped by the state of our bodies. They're to dust we will return, right?
Right.
Yes, oh, I'm so sorry.
No, because I really like your ordering. I really do, and I really love your naming of the faith community, because there's people in this room.
Yeah.
The faith community for this, but on the funeral preparation, the thing is, the vast majority of funeral directors that I've worked with are excellent.
Yeah,
And have sometimes better pastoral skills than some of the pastors. But I have also met a couple of shysters. And I've been with people, a lot of funeral directors have said things like, this is what, if it's $10,000 casket. And they ask the question, well, what does your mom mean to you?
yeah,
Oh,
I have as well. There was a funeral home in Wisconsin we stopped working with because of comments like that. Yeah. Yeah, and again, I think keeping your voice in the room is a burden lifting gift and a clarity. I mean, taking you back to my own experience. So when I was in that hospital room, having to make a really hard choice, I hadn't slept in days. I'd barely eaten. And quite frankly, the palliative consult who came to me was awful. She was graphically going through what CPR was. And I finally said, I'm not arguing with you. I don't need the dramatics. I know what this means. I just need a second and to get my brothers on the phone. And so, like I said, if I wasn't equipped for that moment, I think I was well equipped, but I was unable to do it without my dad's voice in the room. So I was really grateful for his wishes that saved me from making a grief-stricken choice that would have been ill-advised. So in the face of funeral directors, palliative consults, just your own grief, having a healthcare directive puts your voice in the room, and that is a gift. Yeah.
Does the healthcare directive cover the do not resuscitate?
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yeah, and there's layers to that. It's not just a yes or no. There are some details around a do not resuscitate order.
When I was a medical pastor and I did home cleaning and stuff, I used to ask all the people the notes, like is there in that instructor fee and this recommend a lot and why? Those kinds of things. What is your vision of what your funeral would be like? And then I took notes of big files for all of them, so I read
Such a gift.
Homebound elderly people.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate, with that, and they, you know, I think many of us get to do that.
Yes.
So Martha has files and Esther has files.
Yeah.
They should keep it.
Mhm. Yes, the church I served had a cemetery with a columbarium, so we did a lot of end-of-life preparation work in our congregation. And same, those files were, you know, that church could burn, but those files would remain, because that was the most, I just felt like the most important, most valuable piece of information that we have. I want to talk about how, getting them done is one thing. Right, you're probably all thinking, okay, I could attend that, I could attend those community education classes, I can call my lawyer, I can get some things straightened out. I can't tell you how many times I have seen the misstep of not talking about it with your loved ones. So getting it all ready is great, but again, I'm just gonna call out my angel father. He talked to us about it all the time. He was perfectly healthy, he's like, Dad, I don't want to talk about this again. But we knew who was the power of attorney, who was the healthcare agent, and so that was very, very helpful. I see so many families that when maybe Franny's in her elder care home and the facility says, I think your mom would be eligible for hospice. And the family goes, what? And then they dig in and they go, wait, you're the healthcare agent? You know, we don't want surprise at this point in your life. And because that can add to that conflict or that grief burden that we've already tried to alleviate. So you've done all the hard work. Now it's time to have some conversation and communication around it. And I just want to say this as plain as I can. I'll get to it in just 1 second. It doesn't have to be an eyeball to eyeball conversation. If that feels like it would be way too hard, put it in writing and give it to your loved ones on your birthday. Celebrate your life and let them know that you are trying to take care of them after you're gone. But find a way to communicate with those who will be seeing these documents, so they have a chance to process that and it's not a shock, again, when they're in that hard moment. And distribute the information. So my brother had access to my dad's healthcare directive because it had been emailed to all of us and given to us in duplicate. So we had it at our fingertips. So my brother's at work and he closes his door and takes my horrible phone call, pulls up dad's healthcare directive on his computer and reads it to us. Right, so we knew what it said, but we reviewed it again because then we had it immediately available. Yeah, Dave.
I have a sister who's 86, she lives in Italy, right near her daughter, and son-in-law, and 18-year-old grandson. You just came back from there. 2 years ago, they were here for a family reunion, and I talked to Paula, my niece, and said, when your mom dies, I'll come over. And he said, that would be great. Then in the meantime, I started thinking, was she just being nice to me, or am I just going to be one more layer of things she has to deal with? In addition to that, so while we're there, I said, I'm gonna have an even more frank conversation with Paula. And we talked about it and she burst into tears. I really want my family there. And I said, we already had the money set aside to do it and try again. And then we decided to have that same conversation with my sister so that she would go. And that was really rich. All of a sudden, we're talking to this dear person who's really in good health for an bro. But we're talking about her death, and it's like the most natural thing in the world. Then I was in Naples last weekend with my nephew. And we were just the two of us, and I decided he needed to be part of that conversation. So I told him what we've been talking about. And it was so rich, to talk to a young person.
Yeah.
He's really close to his grandmother. And like that whole thing was just like such a blessing. It wasn't weird or uncomfortable or awkward.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the more you do it, the less I also think if you're in Italy, it probably helps. Yeah, okay, so that's the other takeaway. Fly your family to Italy and then have conversation.
Oh, I was downstairs, so I'd like to know about what you're talking about.
What are we talking about? Yeah, we are talking about kind of funeral planning and end of life preparations. And then I'm gonna shift into hospice care here in a second.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, you want to do that, I think.
yeah, you're doing great. Yeah, that's too much. Oh, I already gave away the slide. Yeah, so again, have the conversations however you can. Yeah, I do want to say, sometimes I see families burdened by Franny's final wishes were, I try to avoid that language. That's kind of Hollywood, right? Like their final wishes. And then you've got families like, well, they wanted to scatter their ashes in 10 different places across the country. We don't have any money, but we're gonna take out a loan. You know, I'm not making this up. You try to let go of putting an additional burden on the family, right? They're grieving. They've maybe had to pay out some money for end of life arrangements. They've traveled. And just make sure if you say, my greatest wish at the end of my life is, okay, whatever comes next needs to be doable. And we know how this ends, but we don't know those chapters just before it ends. And it's usually not as easy as it's, you know, there are not hearts and clean linens. There's usually like McDonald's bags on the floor and nobody slept and everyone smells. And then they're trying to carry out a final wish. And that's really, really hard. So as you're preparing your documents, just keep a gracious, open mind about kind of those final wishes, hopes for your family. And if it feels right for you, what permissions can you give them? Do what feels comforting, family. I remember, again, I'm just gonna keep using my dad as an example because I can't really use patient stories. He said, with the tiny bit of money that's left over, will you all go to Duluth for that first Christmas?
Oh,
That's what we did. We rented a beautiful cabin and we went to Duluth for the first Christmas without him and it was awesome. So try to give permission or openness to any sort of, it must be like this at the end. Because there's gonna be a lot of ingredients to the end that we don't know about. So. Okay, yes.
Oh, I just wanted to, I had a close friend, that fellow. Wasn't he's about the most of the street.
Is it possible for you to use a microphone? Can Bruce use a microphone?
Do you wanna use the microphone or else?
Just raise my voice.
Yeah, we're closing doors. I'll repeat it too.
Yeah, so she had close friends, 7. And she put, her ashes were put in 7 envelopes. But he deposited anywhere in the world.
Oh, anywhere. Well, that's nice. 7 envelopes of ashes deposited anywhere in the world.
My friend Jean, what ended up, she had them in her purse for quite a while. Beautiful flowers.
Oh, well, that's pretty good. There's some movie, and I don't know if it's Grumpy Old Men or I'm horrible with movies, but someone's out on a rowboat and they're about to scatter the ashes and then the wind comes up and he ends up like wearing it in his face. And I just think like, that feels truer to
Jingle
me.
bells.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, maybe
Well,
thank you.
at least, maybe more.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're right. Anyways, that just kind of feels honest to me. Okay, I just want to switch to that other bucket of information that I wish to share with you. So I work in hospice care and I would love to just share some general information. I hope I give you some new information and some new comfort with it. Laura and I were talking, I don't think Laura's still in here. She was a hospice social worker for a while. We both said the amount of times that we're told, don't use the H word. We're talking hospice with that H word. There's still so much stigma and fear around it that even when we're approaching patients who are going to come onto hospice, we're not allowed to use the word. So it is my passion in life to break open the stigma because it is such a gift and it is free. So in all of the injustice and inequality that is rife in our medical care system, hospice isn't perfect, but it pretty well gets over all of those. It is free to everyone. So I'm getting on my high horse before I get started. So hospice care is holistic care for patients and their loved ones. It is totally unique to healthcare. We approach our patients as whole human beings with their spiritual, emotional, financial, physical, communal well-being. And we focus on comfort and quality of life rather than curative care. I love this timeline because it shows us both that hospice really was born of women in healthcare, pioneers in their field, and that it's just a little baby here in the United States. It really came into the United States in the mid-70s, kind of alongside Kubler-Ross's grief work. We were getting a little bit more comfortable with mortality. And now when you kind of fast forward to today or a recent survey of Medicare certified hospices, there's nearly 6,000 in the United States, some better than others. But it is really taken off as a way to understand end-of-life care. And Cicely Saunders is kind of the matriarch of hospice care, and she has this amazing quote that says, "You matter because you are, and you matter to the last moment of your life." I love this graphic. It really beautifully shows what all happens in hospice care. So on this side of the circle is what we call the core four in my daily work. The nurse, social worker, chaplain, and CNA. Does everyone know what a CNA is? A certified nursing assistant. They do the cares for folks who need help with daily living, getting dressed, eating breakfast, taking a shower. And we, at Brighton, most of our patients get CNA visits 5 days a week. So the nurse might come out 1 to 2 times a week until the very end, and then they're there every single day. The social worker comes 1 to 2 times a month. The chaplain comes twice a month. And then the CNA 5 days a week. So imagine Franny in her senior living community has got the staff there, and they've got 22 people to get up in the morning, but Franny's on hospice. And so she has someone who comes and gets her dressed, it gets her meds on time, it gets her to breakfast. And then the chaplain comes, mid-morning, and the social worker's checking in with the family about some paperwork that needs to get done. The nurse has come and changed some meds to help with some agitation. And all of this is happening over the layer of care happening at the facility. So we are icing, but we are well-educated icing. I just can't believe how many facilities we go into and we provide educations on end-of-life care to these medical professionals. Because like I said on the last slide, it is a total shift to the healthcare approach. It is not curative, it is comfort and dignity and quality of life. And then the left side of the circle is kind of the lesser known parts of hospice. But massage and music therapy are both available to hospice patients. And then these last two are my favorite, probably because I work in this department. But bereavement support, and I'm going to get into the Medicare benefit a little bit more, but Medicare requires us to provide grief support to families for 13 months. So every single patient, whether they've been on our services for an hour or a year or longer, we follow them for a year. And for a lot of those folks, it just looks like beautifully curated emails with a bunch of grief education in it that comes out in a timely way. So it's been 6 months since your loved one died. Here's what you might be experiencing. It's been 1 year. How might you mark the occasion? Here's some ideas. And then for people that we rate, that we assess that maybe are going to struggle more, we have a grief counselor as a part of our agency. And her job is to make phone calls, visits, and help people connect with local resources if they need more professional help. So I'm really proud that that is a part of all that we do. It doesn't stop at time of death, that we go for a whole 2 months. And then we have volunteers. Medicare requires that 5% of our patient care hours comes from the community, which I both think is awesome and hard. Because if you're at a volunteer fair and there's like walk dogs for the Humane Society and read to kids during school and hospice, you're probably going to go walk a dog. But as I say, courageous people are in hospice care. And so we have volunteers, we have pet therapy volunteers, we have companion volunteers, and those are people who come and paint Franny's nails, listen to Elvis music, go for a walk around the memory care unit, whatever. And then we have one that I've just seen be very, very impactful. We have a vigil volunteer team. And we use them often. And these are for folks who just don't have family around them, or they do and the family is exhausted. And we say, why don't we line up vigil for 4 hours tonight? And then you can go home and take a shower and get a decent meal and then come back. And they know that they have people who are informed and trained and will sit there for 4 hours. So a not at all shameless plug. If you are like, I could do this, let me know. We always are looking for more volunteers at Brighton, or any hospice agency is always looking for more volunteers. So any questions about the kind of the holistic care involved in the Medicare benefit? Okay, yeah,
Could I just give a brief illustration of my mother?
sure, absolutely, absolutely. Come on up, yep.
My mother died at 95 and, but she was, she had, kind of a tough period in her care at Luther Hall before her death, until hospice. She had contractures in her legs, which meant, quite a bit of pain. And the point came where she was no longer eating and no longer drinking. And the doctor said there was no way that she was going to live more than 2 weeks. And that they proposed, and this is one of the problems with hospice, is that oftentimes it comes too late. Because it's a year and a little over a year of time available. Yeah, and so, but it's often toward the end. And so she was put on hospice. And the first thing they did was they came in and did an assessment. Guess what? They upped her pain medication. And all of a sudden she didn't have all this pain in her life. And she started drinking. And she started eating. And she started going to worship. And so her life, all of a sudden, 2 weeks passed. And 1 month, 6 months passed. She lived an additional 7 months. And probably mostly because of the pain medication. There were 2 other things that the staff said. There were 2 times a week when her countenance was noticeably changed because she was so bright. And one was the trip to the salon. And the other was the hospice music therapist who came in with his guitar, talked to me. He learned about her favorite hymns and music. And on those 2 occasions during the week, they were really high points.
Thank you for.
Yeah, that is the best illustration of what hospice care can do. We do also have a volunteer who does traveling salon work for our patients, so it's really fun too, because there's a great saying, and I always have to think too hard about it, but we do not add days to your life, but life to your days. And I think that's both a little scary thing to accept, and don't we want life in our life until the end of our life? So this is a really holistic way for that to happen. So kind of getting into some of the nitty gritty, but Bruce exactly said it right. It often comes too late because we're afraid of this hospice benefit. We're afraid of some of the language around it, and it is a little fear-inducing. But Medicare Medicare puts the responsibility on the hospice agency to prove that a patient's prognosis is likely 6 months or less. And that's the scary part. We so often encounter the response is, so you're gonna hasten my death. You're gonna make this move faster, which of course we cannot and would never do. But so that is it's a very common response. Now, we have patients, like I said, on our service for hours. We have had a lovely lady on our services for over 3 years. And you can graduate off of hospice. And again, that is our job, is every 14 days, we review every patient and we kind of say, are they still eligible? What decline are we seeing? And this sweet lady, she was on my caseload when I was a chaplain. And we always kind of laugh because as soon as we kind of get serious about talking about graduation, something happens. I'm like, she knows. She's not letting us go. She wants her nails painted every week. She wants her hair braided every week. Anyways. But in all seriousness, if you are considering hospice for yourself or your loved one, there is a little bit of insurance navigating to do because everybody is eligible for free hospice care. But you can't double dip. So you can't use the hospice care benefit and go to chemo if it is meant for curative reasons. You can't have the hospice benefit and go to PT. A lot of our families still have PT or physical therapy and pay out of pocket. So it's a little bit of a dance, but mostly hospice can kind of come in and replace all those other healthcare interventions that we're so used to. I think where we see a lot of folks struggle is you can't get lab draws or x-rays now there's exceptions. If a patient falls and we're pretty sure they've broken their wrist, we're gonna get an x-ray because that's for the quality of their life. But we're so used to testing everything, right? Like we wanna know what this level is and that level is because we're looking to improve and strengthen and endure. And in hospice, it's different. So, but the Medicare benefit is 100% free. So everything I've showed you in that holistic circle of care is free, and all medications, all medical equipment, all supplies like incontinence supplies, oral cares, some toiletries, all included. Our CNAs walk out the door with like big bags on their shoulders and it's shampoos and lotions and mouth swabs and it all comes. And I think what I love about hospice care too is, we're used to waiting, right? You need to see specialists 6 months later, you get in the door. You can have a hospice assessment in the morning, and by the evening, the hospital bed, the medications, they've all arrived. So we move very, very quickly because so many people come to us too late, right? It's often urgent. But this care can add, your story of your mother was just the perfect example. We can come in and provide such attention and compassion and expertise at end of life. That it often stabilizes patients, and often they improve, and then they have a more comfortable journey to the end of their life. So. I want to talk about eligibility, which is, I think this is maybe the hardest part of the conversation. So as we started, I want us just one more time, remember who holds our life and the life everlasting that we were promised. So let's just sing our chant one more time. If we live, we live to the Lord. If we die, we die. So So how does a person get on hospice care? 2 doctors independently need to verify that the patient likely has 6 months or less to live. So our hospice medical director is usually part of that conversation and the patient's primary caregiver. And again, they independently tell Medicare, yes, this person is eligible for hospice care. These calculations are imperfect, as we were just beautifully reminded, doctors do not get it right every time, and sometimes the right care swoops in and changes those calculations. And so that is on the hospice agency to figure out eligibility and remaining on services. And then the other thing about eligibility is we need to hear from the patient or their families that this is the right approach for our loved one. If we go to a hospice assessment and the families say, well, you can assess her, but we're going to take her in for labs tomorrow. You can assess her, but I'm pretty sure we're going to do chemo next week. Then we're probably not quite on the same page, and we haven't gotten to this place of acceptance and really wanting comfort over quantity. So both a medical determination and a philosophical alignment needs to happen before hospice care is initiated. I do have a handout here about eligibility for hospice as well. So if you want to read more about kind of what decline looks like, you are welcome to grab one of those. But I'm going to talk about some common myths about hospice, and then I'll open up for questions. So we get a little bit more into eligibility here too. Okay, just a quick list of common misunderstandings about hospice. Is that hospice is just for cancer patients. Again, I think we have Hollywood to thank for this. I feel like hospice only happens in movies where there are cancer patients. But I think about 60% of our census, and we serve over 400 patients across the metro, have a dementia or Alzheimer's or senile degeneration of the brain diagnoses. We also have a lot of chronic heart failure, COPD, and then of course, cancer and Parkinson's as well. We also have malnutrition or failure to thrive. Sometimes our bodies are just done. And that is the best diagnosis that we have to work with. So hospice is for everybody who reaches the end of their life, and that will be all of us. Another very common misunderstanding is that hospice means death is imminent. I've already kind of covered this, but there's nothing about the hospice benefit that hastens death. The medication changes that happen in conversation with the family or the patient themselves. And as we've already beautifully heard, many patients enrolled in hospice have a beautiful improvement, a beautiful stability. I do some trainings with our clinical team, the nurses and the CNAs, to help give them some kind of pastoral care skills. And I often ask them, when is the last time that somebody held your hand and looked in your eye and asked you, how are you feeling? And our team comes and does that almost every day for our patients. Would that not improve the quality of your life, whether you are terminal or not? Right? I think our CNAs are actual angels upon the earth. They just exude compassion and joy. And a little tidbit about our CNAs, like I said, they are the ones who come 5 days a week, see our patients, get them breakfast, get them ready for the day. They are often the ones at the end of someone's life where they say, I put Franny in her favorite red sweater because she's actively dying. She's at the end of her life. She's not going to change clothes again. I put her in her favorite red sweater and I made sure her hair looked nice because her family's coming tonight. I mean, I am astounded at the level of intimacy involved in this care, and that this CNA probably knows this woman better than her family who's flying in from all over the country. Not better, but they know her in this phase of life. And so are preparing her in the way that is meaningful to her so that she's ready for her family. And that happens every single day. I could go on and on about stories like that. Hospice means giving up. This one's hard. Hospice does not mean giving up, but it does mean accepting that we are all mortal beings. And the end is, well, that wonderful book, we know how this ends. And it is the acceptance of that ending. And again, we've talked about the prognosis and how that is often inaccurate. And then this is a fact that patients enrolled in hospice live on average 21 days longer than those not enrolled in hospice. But hospice means giving the appropriate time and attention to the problem of mortality or the reality of mortality. It is not giving up. And as I've already said, our healthcare system is curative. It is in one direction. This is one way to approach the body. And hospice says there is another way, and it is full of comfort and patient-centered choices and what is meaningful to them at the end of their life. So it is just putting a different response to this question we've had our whole life. And then all hospice providers are the same. Again, I'm not here to sell you to Brighton, but as I've told you, I've used them as a daughter and a pastor, and that now I've worked for them for quite a while. So I can really only speak to Brighton. I know Dr. Patrick has lots of other experiences, but he always tells me when I see him in church, send another one your way. Take good care. He never tells me the names, of course. But I know he says that Brighton's on the top of his referral list. But I am sharing this with you to say, to do your homework. For most patients, I think that our CNA services are very, very important. They add huge quality of life to every single day of a patient. But that's not like the romantic death image that we have in our head, right? We all want the harps and the angels in the corner. And that is wonderful, and I don't mean to make any light of that. But just keep in mind what you or your loved one would actually need at the end of their life. There are hospice agencies in the metro that have way more music and massage than Brighton does, but Brighton has more CNA services than any other hospice. And all hospices are required by Medicare to provide that core for the nurse, CNA, chaplain, social worker, and volunteers and bereavement. So most of them have kind of the same requirements, and then it's how do they live out those requirements. So when you are considering hospice, I highly recommend calling 3 and getting the information. I also want to say, if you are having a moment of, gosh, maybe it's time to call hospice, just do it. They can come and do an assessment, and they can tell you it's not time. I know we have thank you. I will finish right now. We have a program called Pathways, so that when we assess that a patient isn't ready, we will call them every month and check in with the facility or the family to say, have you seen any major changes? Would you like us to come back out for an assessment? So making the phone call is not signing any paperwork, right? So, any questions? I'm sorry I went all the way to. All right, well, I have a lot of literature here if you want to grab anything just for further learning, and I love to talk about hospice care, so you ask me questions anytime you see me. Thanks for being brave and being a part of this conversation. Yeah,
Oh, just one thing, I didn't know if you had references at the end, but kind of going back to the start of your thing, Honoring Choices Minnesota, or just if you search for Honoring Choices, if you're looking for what a short form or a long form advancce directive looks like in the paperwork, they're a great resource.
they are honoring choices, if you didn't hear that, yeah.
And then, you know, on the provider side of things, I've seen this happen. If people have an advancce directive, yeah, keep a copy in your safe or safety deposit box. So you've got like the master copy, but make certain that, to your point, there are actually ones that are accessible to the people who are going to need it.
Yes.
Because we've had that happen too, where it's like, we know we've got it, but we can't actually, we don't have the time to get to it in the safe. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Get your healthcare directive in all the hands it needs to be in. Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
So.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
No, I